In 1962, Soviet soldiers shot their own citizens. Not enemies of the state, not foreign spies, not armed rebels, factory workers, who went on strike because the government raised food prices and they could not afford to eat. The Soviet Union shot hungry people for complaining about being hungry, then spent 30 years moving the bodies so nobody could count them. And when it was finally exposed, not one person went to prison. Novocherkassk was an ordinary Soviet industrial city in southern Russia, built around one factory. The Novocherkassk electric locomotive factory employed the majority of the city's working population. These were not dissidents, not political activists, not people trying to overthrow the Soviet system. They were workers who woke up every morning, put on their overalls, and built trains for the state. They believed in the system. They were the system. And on June 1st, 1962, the system betrayed them in a way that took 30 years to fully come to light. That morning, the Soviet government announced a 30% increase in the price of meat and butter. Overnight. No warning. No consultation. Just a notice pinned to a board. At the same time, the Novocherkassk factory management announced a simultaneous increase in production quotas, meaning workers would have to produce more to earn the same wage. More work. Higher food prices. Same pay. The workers did the mathematics, and they walked off the factory floor. The factory director came out to address them. When workers told him they could not afford meat, he reportedly told them to eat liver pies instead. That was the moment a strike became something else. By evening, thousands of workers had gathered outside the factory. By the next morning, they were marching through the city. Thousands of Soviet citizens, workers, wives, children, walking peacefully toward the Communist Party headquarters to present their demands. They were carrying hand-painted signs. They were singing. They believed that if they could just speak to the right people, if they could just be heard, the problem would be resolved. They did not know that Nikita Khrushchev had already made a different decision. He had sent the tanks. Soviet army units had arrived in Novocherkassk overnight. As the workers marched toward the party headquarters, the soldiers formed a line across the street. The crowd stopped. For a moment, nothing happened. And then the order was given. Soviet soldiers opened fire on Soviet citizens in a Soviet city in broad daylight. Men and women fell in the square. Snipers on the roof of the party building fired into the crowd from above. Children who had come with their parents were caught in the shooting. The official Soviet death toll was 26. Witnesses and survivors said the real number was far higher. Because what happened next tells you everything about what the government believed the truth to be. Within hours, the KGB was moving through the city's hospitals, identifying the wounded, removing patients from wards, silencing nurses and doctors. At night, KGB officers came to the streets where people had fallen. They loaded bodies onto military vehicles. They drove through the night to cemeteries in distant regions. They dug graves. They buried the dead of Novocherkassk hundreds of kilometers from the city where they were killed, so their families could not find them. So there could be no grave to visit, no marker, no memorial, no number that could be counted. The Soviet government did not just shoot its workers. It tried to make the shooting disappear. Then came the trials. Secret, no press, no public gallery. 7 strike leaders were sentenced to death and executed. Over 100 more were sentenced to prison, terms of up to 15 years. For going on strike, for asking for food they could afford, for walking to the party headquarters with handwritten signs. And in every Soviet newspaper, nothing. In every Soviet history book, nothing. In every Soviet classroom, nothing. Novocherkassk did not exist. For 30 years, an entire massacre was buried under the same system that had ordered it. It was only under Mikhail Gorbachev's glasnost, his policy of openness in the late 1980s, that Soviet journalists could first report what had happened. Survivors who had spent 30 years speaking about it only in whispers behind drawn curtains finally spoke on the record. The KGB archive files were opened. The bodies were found, identified, returned to Novocherkassk for proper burial. 30 years after they were shot for asking to be fed, a Russian government investigation concluded that the main perpetrators had died. No charges were brought, no convictions, no reparations. The workers of Novocherkassk asked for food in 1962. They are still waiting for justice. We have now covered 4 stories on this page that the powerful hoped you would never connect. My Lai, where America killed 504 Vietnamese civilians having breakfast and gave the soldiers medals. The Zone, where a British court treated the murder of 132 enslaved Africans as a routine insurance dispute. Tulsa, where America bombed the wealthiest black community in its history and denied every insurance claim that followed. And now Novocherkassk, where the Soviet Union shot its own hungry workers and spent 30 years hiding the bodies. For different countries, for different centuries, one pattern: when power decides a life is inconvenient, it reaches for whatever tool is available. Bullets, courts, insurance forms, classified files. The tool changes. The decision never does. And we are just getting started. Because this series is going continent by continent, country by country. We are going to Jamaica and what Britain did after the Morant Bay Rebellion. We are going to China and the massacres that the government still refuses to name. We are going to Papua New Guinea and the colonial atrocities that no documentary has ever fully covered. We are going to Japan and the war crimes that were traded for scientific data. We are going to the Philippines, to Trinidad, to Nigeria, to Germany, to Europe, to Africa, to Oceania, to Asia. Every continent, every country, every buried story. As the great James Baldwin once said, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. We are facing it. Every story we tell is documented by the people who did it and caused it. Not rumor, not opinion. Their own records, their own court documents, their own classified files, their own words used against them. The Odd Archive is the most factual history page on the internet. And we are not finished. Now tell me something. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your country below, because the next massacre or genocide I cover is going to come from these comments. Every country on Earth has a Novocherkassk, a moment when the powerful turned on the people they were supposed to protect, and buried the evidence for decades. Tell me which country you are from. Tell me which hidden atrocity from your nation or anywhere on Earth you want me to dig into next. The comment with the most response tells me where we go. Share this video right now. Someone in your life believes the Soviet Union collapsed because it was evil from the beginning. Show them a factory worker who built trains and went on strike because he could not afford meat. Show them what happened to him. Show them where they buried him. One share puts this in front of thousands of people who have never heard the name Novocherkassk. Find us on YouTube, search official The Odd Archive, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And leave us a review on our Facebook page. Because what we are building here, continent by continent, document by document, truth by truth, has never been done before. And the next story is already found.